Very pleased to welcome to the programme live now Steve Israel. He is a former Democratic congressman who represented New York until 2017. It's really good to speak to you on the programme. Thanks for finding the time today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Look, first of all, can you give us a little insight into the mood within your party today? I can only imagine there is a good deal of soul searching now.
Well, obviously, it's quite a despairing and dispirited mood. However, there is still a possibility, and I want to emphasize possibility, that the Democrats could take the majority of the House of Representatives and provide some checks and balances on the worst impulses of President Trump. There are still too many House seats that have not yet been counted. And so while Democrats remain deeply distressed and disappointed, they're still holding out some hope that they could take the majority in the House of Representatives.
And I will ask you a bit later on about the picture in Congress, but I think we really do need to focus first of all on the scale of Trump's win here and indeed of Kamala Harris's loss. I mean, Trump has eaten into the Democratic vote, not just in those so-called swing states, but also in really traditional blue areas. I'm thinking of places like New York, Maine. How do you explain that?
We're in a very volatile political environment in the United States. Every election produces a different direction in the next election. And I think what we saw across the country was an overwhelming and deep anxiety by American voters about the economy, about the inflation. One of the prominent mantras, sayings in American politics is, "It's the economy, stupid." And we heard that in this election, it would be about a woman's right to reproductive freedoms, that it would be about democracy. Well, it turns out that this was about the economy. This is about voters, particularly in battleground states, who are still struggling. And Donald Trump has managed to tap into those anxieties, to resonate with his message. His message, of course, is if you're struggling, we will build a wall and not allow people to come here. We will deport people who have come here. If you're struggling, we will impose tariffs. We will be protectionists. And that message actually resonated with so many of those voters. I think what the Democratic Party has to do in the United States is learn how to match that message, how to offer people some policies that give them a sense of economic security, which they lack very much right now.
Right. Clearly, the economy is a big part of this story. And as we're digesting the numbers, one thing that is becoming clear is that minorities across the United States, Latinos, black voters, have voted for Trump in higher numbers than in previous elections. Now, one suggestion that I heard earlier today is that it is a partial failing of the Democrats, who have for a long time seen those ethnic groups effectively as monoliths who would naturally vote for the Democratic Party. I wonder whether you recognize that characterization, whether you do think that Democrats have taken black and other minority votes for granted in the past.
No, I would disagree. In fact, if you take a look at things strategically and tactically, if you measure priorities by investments in field organizers and media, commercials and outreach, Democrats didn't take them for granted at all. Democrats had a very robust program to try and secure their votes. It wasn't enough to compensate for the fact that many of those voters in the African-American community, in the Hispanic community, still feel economic insecurities. They were willing to overlook Donald Trump's worst impulses. And I will give you an example. A week before the election, Donald Trump was in my home state of New York at Madison Square Garden, where a speaker called Puerto Rico garbage. You would think in a normal political environment that would have been enough to help convince Hispanic voters not to support him. Well, it wasn't. They put their own economy, their own sense of lacking economic mobility, their own insecurities economically ahead of those other considerations. Barack Obama got about 70% of the Hispanic vote in 2012. Kamala Harris will have underperformed that. For the Democrats to regain their path, we've got to find a way of addressing the economic concerns of both African-American and Hispanic voters.
Do you think Kamala Harris ran a good campaign?
Well, she ran as good a campaign as you can when it's so abbreviated. Let's remember, this was an anomaly, and I'm not using this as an excuse. It is a reality. Nobody expected that she would be running for president 6 months ago. Everybody thought that she'd be running for re-election as vice president. She did an amazing job of consolidating her vote early on. It just wasn't enough to compensate for those fundamental concerns that people had about the future of their own economy.
All right, I'd like to get your thoughts then on this incoming Trump administration, the kinds of people who he will appoint now to top jobs, because last time around when he won in 2016, there were relatively mainstream figures, the likes of John Kelly, James Mattis, who did join his government. John Kelly saying not too long ago, though, that Trump meets the criteria of a fascist. So, look, he won't be joining that government anytime soon. So your thoughts then on who's going to be running the country from next year alongside Donald Trump?
So I think that you just put your finger on the deepest concern that many of us have. And by the way, not just Democrats. I've talked to Republicans who have this concern. You are exactly right. In 2016, Donald Trump was the unexpected president, and he brought on people who have essential trust and faith and respect for democratic norms and institutions. People that you mentioned, Mattis, McMaster, Kelly. They imposed restraints on him. They managed his worst impulses. It was a very difficult job. But now, the second Trump term, I don't know that there will be adults in the room that he's willing to bring in. I don't know that he's going to be willing or able to bring in people who will restrain discipline on him, who will impose norms on him. And so I very much worry that he will bring in the most extreme elements of the MAGA movement. They are not built to cultivate cooperation. They are built to disrupt. And that is a very deep concern. Now, here's the only silver lining in all of this, if I may, and that is we do have another set of elections in 2 years. And if the Trump administration goes too far, and if it veers from the more centrist sensibilities of American voters, then the midterm elections in 2026 will correct all of that, just as they did in 2018 when Trump had gone too far in his first 2 years of his first term.
Steve Israel, former Democratic congressman, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.